what would you do if you were starting a brand new channel in 2022? And what kind of advice can you give our viewers? And I'd like that advice not just to be woodworking, because not everybody may want to have a woodworking, but what advice about YouTube and about the woodworking YouTubers would you give us?
Let me give you a 30,000-foot view, and then we can dig in a little bit deeper on each bullet point I'm going to talk through. The first thing that I would recommend to anybody, and this of course applies to any niche that you're looking to start a channel for, is before you even take the first steps in terms of researching and all that, which we'll talk about in a second, I would have a really honest conversation with yourself about what you're looking to get out of the channel and what your expectations are. I see a lot of comments from people, not just in the Facebook group, but just elsewhere, people messaging me, and I read a lot of comments, and I do a lot of research or cruising around YouTube in general. And people say things like, I'm just doing the channel for fun. I have no expectations for growth. This is just a hobby for me. And if that's all you're looking to get out of it, disregard everything else that I'm about to say, because there's no reason to beat yourself up in terms of analytics, thumbnails, titles, editing, and all that. So keep it fun, keep it light. But I would implore everyone who's watching tonight, and if you started a channel or if you're considering starting a channel, be as honest with yourself as you can. And I think, RT, you mentioned it, and you guys will find as we talk more, and if you've watched my videos, you'll notice this, I'm brutally honest. I would guess that most people who start channels deep down inside probably have some aspirations of trying to grow it. I mean, it's a considerable amount of work to create a YouTube video. So just be honest with yourself, and don't set yourself up to be second guessing or to get frustrated in the future when things aren't going well. If you said you're just going to start this as a hobby, then treat it as a hobby. So that's number one. And then as far as the tactical side of it, Steve Ramsey was a guest on Matt Outlaw's live stream a couple months ago. And Steve said something really, really interesting, and it somewhat got lost in the shuffle, but I loved the quote. It's at the 31-minute mark if anyone wants to go back and check it out. But Steve said something to the effect of, I don't want to sound catty, but as I look around at all of these other woodworking channels, and I've got a list of 150 to 200, they all look and feel the same. And what Steve was referring to is what I would have referred to in my 9-to-5 job as your brand voice. And let me also preface a lot of this with, I am not a YouTube expert, but I lean on my 9-to-5 job pretty considerably for all the decisions made in my YouTube channel. I'm fortunate that a lot of it translates over. So I know what works and what doesn't work in that regard. So brand voice is where I see people just get completely hung up. I don't think many people think about it. I don't think many people know what it is. And I guess to put it more simply for the sake of this conversation, you could say that brand voice are just the qualities and characteristics that separate your channel from competitor channels. And competitor doesn't mean that I'm a competitor against you, RT. It just means you versus the other channels, right? Because we're all, in some sense, competing for eyeballs because there's a limited time that someone's going to spend on the platform. So you've got to have a different point of view and in a different opinion and a different delivery than the other channels that are more established. And if you don't, I think you're going to be treading water for a long time. And that's the only way that you can truly stand out. And if you go through and you think of the top channels right now that are getting the most views, Jason Hibbs for sure, Cam at Blacktail's a really good example of it. Who's another good one? Chris Salamone at Four Eyes. If you were to just try and describe their channels in 2 sentences or less, I think everyone here could probably do that pretty easily. And then I would ask you the same conversation if you're sitting here watching this, thinking about your channel. Could you describe your channel in 2 sentences or less? And it can't be something of, I make build videos and watch me learn how to figure out woodworking, because everyone does that. So you got to have a different spin on things. And I get that that's somewhat superfluous and it's not terribly tangible, unlike most things in woodworking, but I would say it's arguably the most important thing that you need to consider when setting up a channel. And if you're looking for a really quick cheater version of it, there was a great interview with Hillier Smith. He was on the Film Booth video maybe 3 or 4 months ago. If you haven't watched it, you need to watch it. But Hillier Smith, if you're unfamiliar with him, is the editor for Logan Paul, who 4 billion plus views or something, so he knows what he's talking about. And he said, if you're looking to find your voice through editing, challenge cliches. And I think that's a really, really sound advice. When I heard it for the first time, it was pretty profound. So the second thing that I would kind of parlaying off of brand voice is a value proposition. You got to have some inherent value in your channel, and your videos have to provide value. And this is also where I see people get hung up. Value doesn't necessarily just mean that you are teaching every time, right? Or you're explaining something differently. A lot of my videos, I try and make things basically a Cliff Notes version of it, is how Suman sums it up. There's different ways to provide value. It could be value just through comedy. It could be value through a soothing, relaxing, introspective build video. And there's plenty of those out there. But you just have to figure out, does this video provide value? And if it doesn't, then you got to go back to the drawing board, unfortunately. And then the next part of that would be the research side of it. So this isn't super fun, and this is also where I would assume most people don't spend a lot of their times. But before I started the channel last year, so I decided at the end of January, maybe it was, no, end of December, I was going to start it. And I spent the entire month of January auditing channels on YouTube in our space. What videos get a lot of views? What topics get more views? Why did this channel perform differently than the other one? I tried to become basically an expert in it. I could tell you the top videos at the time of probably 30 different channels. And if you're not an expert in something, I think it's really, really challenging to grow quickly. And if you were, let's say you were starting a business outside of YouTube, you wouldn't just start a business without looking at the competitive landscape. What are other people doing? What is my target demo? All of those things. So you have to put in the hours, and you got to look at videos critically. You can't just watch them and be like, oh, that was a fun video. You have to think to yourself, why did I like that video? Why did I want to leave during that point in time, etc. So that's really, really important. The answers to the test are there. I say this all the time. You just got to go and you have to find the answers. And it's not super easy. But the lovely thing about YouTube is you can see views for every channel. I mean, you can read the comments too. You get real-time feedback in terms of what people were thinking while they were watching videos, which is invaluable, to say the least. And then obviously, last but not least, you got to just piece all of that together. And I'm a big goal setter. Some people don't believe in it, but I think you just got to start setting goals. Without them, you're a bit of a ship without a rudder situation. So set those goals, and then figure out what you need to do to achieve said goals. And whether it's posting videos, whether it's making edits to your videos, all those things. But I think you have to have some milestones that you need to hit.
We had Mr. King on here a couple of weeks ago. He was talking about the research he did before he released a single YouTube short. Well, the research he did led him to putting together a video less than a minute, but there was many, many hours of research before that, but it led to 5 million views. So research can be very important. Do you like that clip from our recent live stream? If so, you might want to check out the entire interview over here, or you might want to check out one of our other videos up here.